so that we'll have this webinar. And want to say welcome on behalf of both ILRIG, the International Labor Research and Information Group, as well as the Workers' World Media Productions, who are the joint co-hosts of this webinar. The webinar is entitled South Africa Unrest, How Do We Understand What Happened? And I think you saw from the invitation that we have a very interesting lineup of speakers, 3 speakers, and we hope Busisiwe from ABM, as I said, will join us as we move through. But are already with us here is Mandy Musaris, and Mandy is here in her personal capacity. She co-wrote with Sean from ILRIG as well a piece that I'm going to put, came with the invitation, but if you look at your chat now, you'll see that all the speakers there, that's the link to the article that Mandy and Sean wrote called Historic Rupture or Warring Brothers Again. Then we have Ismail Lasoufi. Ismail is representing the COVID-19 Working Class Campaign. You'll see the link there to the statement that the campaign issued on the unrest. And then hopefully, as I said, we'll be joined by Busisiwe Diko from Abahlali Basemndlolo. And there's a link there to Abahlali's statement as well on the unrest. And we thought that those would present some very, very interesting perspectives, somewhat different perspectives. And we obviously want to engender a debate where there is the need for one, and to listen to differing perspectives coming from and hopefully also that those of you who have taken the time and to come and participate with us will also contribute. When the time comes after the speakers, the way that this webinar will move is that we will allow Mandy to speak. We're giving the speakers 15 minutes. I'll try to keep you to that that time frame. Then we'll go to Ismail, and hopefully by that stage, Busisiwe will have joined us. And then after that, we will open it up to the floor. If you would like to say something, you can post your comment in the chat, or we have a Q&A. So at the bottom, you can see there in the list of options, there's a Q&A. You can post your questions there or comments, or in the chat function, and we'll take those on board. Or if you'd like to speak, please just raise your hand, and then we'll recognize you and allow you to turn on your microphone, and then you can ask your question or make your comment as you so please. Okay, so that's, and then we'll come back at the end and allow the speakers one last opportunity to make some retort or response to some of the questions and comments and other things, and then we'll close. So without any further ado, again, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and what should be, I think, a very interesting presentation and debate. So with Mandy, I'm going to ask you to turn on your video and your sound, and we're going to hand it over to you for the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dale. Hi, comrades. I'm really not looking forward to this. I hate Zoom, and I hate not being able to see everybody's faces. I don't think you're going to have to cut me short. I'm not a big talker, but you might. So let's see how it goes. So I think the issues and debates around this, I think I read through the other comrades or the other organization statements, and I think what's important is to kind of, there wasn't a lot of disagreement. I mean, I think we all agreed that this whole thing was instigated. I mean, the riots were instigated by the Zuma faction in the ANC. I think we've all said that. I think also importantly, there was a mutual recognition of the righteous indignation behind the response of the looters based on the poverty and inequality that people are living within. So I think the recognition of the poverty that people are living in and the response of the rioting to that was agreed by everyone as well. I also don't think we disagree that these events are incredibly important. They certainly mark a change within the political climate. But where I do think there's some disagreement is around why these issues are important, and what we've learned from them, and how we see this impacting on the left, on the working class going forward. So I think within that framework, I'd also like to talk a little bit about why Sean and I wrote the article. I think as anti-capitalists, we always have this knee-jerk reaction when we see ruptures and defiance of the current system, to kind of get excited and think, finally, something's happening. There's some kind of movement. But for Sean and I think we were really concerned about what was happening for a number of reasons, and that's sort of what it is what our article begins to outline, or tries to outline. And I think the first concern that we had was that these riots happened within the context of a rise on the right, globally, but also within the understanding that this was instigated by those in power, by a warring faction of the ruling party, who are, as we outlined in our article, tightly linked to the capitalist system in different, well, not in different ways, they're just supported by different capitalists within the system. So in the first part of the article, we talk a lot about the new South Africa project, and about how right from the beginning, the actual system of capitalism was never challenged. It was, if you look at the RDP, for example, we all were involved in some way or another in either the writing or the reading of the RDP, which was the ANC's first economic and social strategy before 1994, and it formed a strong part of the election campaign. Most of the chapters were really progressive, and we have a very progressive constitution, we all know that. But if you look at chapter 9, which was the financial chapter, there was no change to the fundamental economic structure that was adopted by the ANC in the new South Africa. So we didn't see, and this is kind of obviously, we didn't see any change in the system, the economic system under which we live. And that has just spiraled into the world that we're living in now, where those that had money continue to have money. Those that took political power became the allies of capital, because the state is in and of itself the enforcer of capitalism. They set the rules, they decide what economic system we have. And we saw throughout the 90s how jobs were destroyed because the ANC was kowtowing to demands from the World Bank and other institutions that we lowered tariffs. We lost 1 million jobs in the clothing and textile industry because of that. So basically, we are where we are because we maintain the system, and the ruling party has maintained that system. Only difference is who in the ruling party has been in power and has been benefiting from that. And that context for us was really important, because when you have a response by the working class to that system, in other revolutions, that response is based on a political interest. I did notice that comrades from the C19 Alliance had mentioned that, had equated this to Argentina. And I think, you can't really make that comparison, because the Argentinian revolution, or the Argentinian riots, sorry, it was not a revolution, was a direct response to the introduction of a new economic plan by the then President Alfonso. There was a very overt political motivation behind that. And it was also within a societal context where workers were taking over factories. There was a very strong worker consciousness around those riots at the time. And I think that's really important for us, because what initiates it sets the tone and makes it what it is. And that was the first concern that we had. We did agree that because of that rupture, the masses did take the gap and responded with the riots and the looting, but it was on an individual basis. There was no sort of overt ideology behind it. In fact, there was no our argument, and this is a point where we do disagree. Our argument was that there was no real ideology driving the looting at all. And you can see this if you log onto Google and scroll through all the visuals. There are no signs, no protests, no slogans, no posters, no graffiti on walls. The only graffiti on walls supported Zuma, and most of the posters were from the backlash, the sort of right-wing backlash, saying we're not going to let you loot our shops type thing. So the motivation behind it is going to have a very significant impact on how things play out. Within the context of the ANC and neoliberal capitalism, another important issue, and so this is one of Sean and I's main concerns, was that, was that prior to this, in addition to the reinforcement of capitalism by the ANC, there was a very conscious dismantling of working class culture. We saw it in the unions. I used to work in the trade unions, where our education systems were shut down, the budgets were cut. There was a shift from shop floor organizing and supporting shop stewards to sitting in NEDLAC and all this sort of social democracy and social corporate democracy that was taking place at the time. So this rupture happens in a time where, as a working class, there's very little organization. The working class is very weak, and we felt, as the left, we need to take some responsibility for that. I think that, for us, it was a serious wake-up call to say, these riots are happening, but they're happening without any context in relation to ideology, in relation to a vision of a different future, because they were just knee-jerk responses to very dire situation that the working class and the masses face. The other concern was how the rioting reinforced sort of fascist approaches and nationalism and xenophobic nationalism in particular, but also in that Abahlali Basemjolo statement, they talk not only about xenophobia against foreign nationals, but they also talk about tribal tensions between isiXhosa and Zulu people. So all the ruptures in our society, race, class, ethnicity, all those kind of issues played themselves out, and we saw some really ugly scenes of the taking place as a result of there not being an ideology behind this. I think importantly, in the Argentinian riots, there were between 14 and 20 deaths. In the South African riots, and the vast majority of the people that died were working class people. There were 276 people who died, and that workers and the masses who were killed in this event, and that for us was very upsetting. So the nature, as it played out, because there was no ideology that backed that, the nature surfaced a whole lot of reactionary and fascist responses amongst the people who were involved in the riots. There were 10 people were trampled to death in a stampede it was not organized, and it was not orchestrated in a way that was building the working class. And the divisions were played upon by the Zuma faction, very much so. They were used. And I think Abahlali's statement is really interesting in terms of the assessment of the manipulation of the divisions in the working class. So I'm going to finish off now, Dale. I don't know how much time I've got, but I don't have much more to say on that, except that so important.
You got plenty. You got a good 5 minutes. Don't worry.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't think I'm going to take the 5 minutes, but I think with that understanding, I think what it did do for us was bring into sharp perspective the complete lack of working class organization in this whole process, and what could happen and what does happen when we as the working class and as leftists and as anti-capitalists are weak. And so for us, the importance of these events were that we need to take this as a lesson. We need to understand that if we're not organized, we create space for right-wing elements to push right-wing agendas, and to allow a backlash that we see in the forming of vigilante groups, that we see in the murders taking place in oh hell, I've forgotten the name of the place. I'm sorry, I had COVID and now my brain has gone a bit haywire. In KwaZulu-Natal, where there were but there was, the right-wing backlash against it all. And we need to look at how we rebuild and what we focus on, what we rebuild. And we need to look at rebuilding a culture that is based on the ideologies that we espouse, that builds community, that fights against the divisions amongst the working class, that fights against racism, that fights against xenophobia, that fights against all the challenges that we have. So yeah, that was why we wrote the article, more or less. I think Sean is on this call, and I hope if I missed anything important, he will pop in when we have the conversation. But that's basically the overview of our article.
Okay. Thank you, Mandy. Thank you for keeping to the time. In fact, didn't necessarily using most of it. I see that we now are joined by Busisiwe. I know Busisiwe was just having some connection difficulties. Welcome, Busisiwe. We started and we have just finished with our first input, which was from Mandy Musaris, and we're now going to shift to Ishmael. As I mentioned, for those of you who've just now joined us here, let me just sort of reiterate for those of you who didn't catch it in the chat. We have, as we had invitation, we had 3 speakers, and Mandy, along with Sean Hattink, had written a piece. I'm going to post again the links to her article and also the article from, the statements from both Abahlali as well as the COVID-19 Working Class Committee. Ishmael, who is going to speak next, is speaking on behalf of the Working Class Committee and their statement. We welcome him. Thank you, Ishmael, for making the time to talk with us. You will have a couple of little extra flexibility in a few more minutes, since we are also, Mandy didn't take all of her allotment. So over to you, Ishmael. If you just turn on your video and there we go. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, comrades. Let me first thank Elric for organizing this space so that we can share some thoughts on how we understand what is being characterized as the July events in South Africa. Now, the statement from the CWCC has been in circulation for some time. I hope comrades have had the opportunity to go through it, but I think the link will be shared And comrades who haven't managed to do so will be able to do so at some point. So what I'm going to try and do quickly is just to make a couple of points around the statement by way of emphasizing the main messages that we were trying to put across. I think our point of entry as the CWCC is the fact that a lot of working class organizations that we identify in the statement were quite quick to condemn the events as nothing but acts of anarchy, criminality, lawlessness, and all manner of negative connotations that you can attach. And our view was that that was a result of the failure on the part of these comrades to distinguish between the two social forces that were central in the events that unfolded in that fateful 2 weeks. Now, I'll just quickly go through the timeline of how the events unfolded as a way to set the scene for how we try to distinguish the actions of the masses from those that were coming from above by way of the forces that coalesced around the persona of Jacob Zuma. Comrades will recall that the Jacob Zuma hands himself or gets arrested on the 7th of July, which was a Wednesday, late at night. And then between the 8th, which is the following day, between the 8th and the 11th, which was a Sunday, the main forces at play, the main forces active in these events were largely those who support Jacob Zuma, those who are always with him whenever there's an opportunity to have a rally. Either he appears in court or he's at Nkandla on the eve of the expiry of the warrant of his arrest. Now, these are the forces that are active, like from Thursday morning until the 11th or the 12th, which is the Monday. Now, the main methods of intervention in all these 4 days were acts of arson. I mean, the burning of trucks at the Moy River, which is something that happened previously, and road blockages, mainly concentrated around various places in KZN. Now, these methods of intervention continue, as I say, up until the evening of the 11th of July. Now, what happens on the evening of that 11th? This is a Sunday. The president of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, addresses the nation in what is being referred to as the what we call so-called family meetings. In there, he spells a range of measures around the adjustment of lockdown level 4, and he says nothing by way of social relief. In other words, he says nothing about the reinstatement of some of those measures that the state put in place last year. Food parcels, social relief by way of the 350 grant. Now, this is the evening of the 11th on Sunday. Then the following day, July the 12th, we begin to see a shift in the nature of the event. Now, up to then, we only saw the kinds of activities that were sort of, the burning of trucks, road blockages, so-called shutdown. But from the 12th onwards, from the Monday onwards, we begin to see a shift by way of the masses entering the terrain. And as soon as the masses enter the terrain, we see a shift towards looting. And the looting is concentrated mainly around shopping malls, and with food items being the primary like items, articles that are being, other things get looted, but primarily these are. And then what we also then see is that I think, as Comrade Mendy was saying, The looting is not typically accompanied by a sense of political organization, in the sense that we do not see clearly worked out demands that are emerging. We don't see slogans that are accompanying this. We don't see a clear political message by way of an interpretation of what is at play. But the looting unfolds. And not only that, the looting gets sort of mutates into Gauteng, and it does so beyond the territories that will be traditionally associated with some of the forces that are triggering the events in KZN. Now, what you then have is a moment of crisis. Now, a moment of crisis generally it creates opportunities for social classes to attend to issues that are outstanding, to resolve scores, to settle scores that are outstanding. From the point of view of the ruling class can use a moment of crisis to regroup and reimpose its dominance in society. What we have seen in this crisis, the ruling class, the response of the ruling class was characterized by inertia at the initial stages. And then later, of course, there's the zigzag in terms of the messaging. The thing starts from ethnic mobilization, it moves to insurrection, and then it moves to a coup, and so on and so on. So the zigzagging, the clear lack of coherence in the way the ruling class responds characterizes basically the failure of the ruling class to have a clear sort of command over how it responds to the. On the part of the working class, of course, the working class takes the opportunity to resolve the burning crisis that it faces. And basically, this is what predisposes the class to respond in the way that it responded. Now, clearly, what the class did was to respond by way of addressing the burning issues of the day, which is the issues of hunger and starvation. And it is in this context that we define these events as food riots. And to that extent, we then say that the food riots are and should be understood as legitimate forms and methods of struggles on the part of the working class. And for us, we see this as, in a way, a radical critique of capitalism, in the sense that the food riots are pushing for the sort of realization of basic conditions for the reproduction of human life, as opposed to a capitalism that mainly looks forward to maximization of profit. In other words, what the riot did was to issue a practical critique, not only of capitalism, but of its neoliberal form, by way of insisting on access to use values, insisting on access to material articles to sustain human life as we have known it in various ways. And by so doing, the food riots were undermining, the rule of private property. They were undermining the rule of money. In other words, undermining market dependence as the mechanism through which to sustain human life. So to that extent, yes, the riots might not have had an overt political tone, but fundamentally their positioning is the one that brings to the fore the place in which the class finds itself. It brings to the fore the fact that the class is unable to sustain its own reproduction, mainly because of the various ways in which it's excluded. In the past, I mean, the working class used to possess its own independent means of generating subsistence. Now, capitalism required that those must be shut down. In other words, for capitalism to survive, the working class must be dispossessed of means of sustaining itself. so that it can be available as a source of labor. In other words, the commodification of labor is at the center of how capitalism functions. So what the food riots were saying was to disrupt that logic, was to disrupt how capitalism organizes society. In other words, the short-circuiting the fact that in order to get access to food and other articles necessary for sustenance of human life, you need money. So what the working class was saying was that, look, thou shalt have access to use values, and thou shalt do so without going through the medium of exchange value. Now, by so saying, it's not to say that there were no issues with how the class came out. In fact, in the statement, we make the point that the manner in which the working class came out, the fact that there were no clear political messages, the fact that there were no clear characterization of the sources of the problem is in itself an indication of where the class is. And we make the point that in the post-apartheid South Africa, the working class has been coming out in partial ways. If you take since the Egoli 2002, there have been a range of anti-neoliberal struggles that the working class has been involved in, but all of those have been happening in a partial, isolated ways. Organizations will emerge and then they collapse. And now, through all of those, from Marikana through to the FISMAS 4, and then this current riots, there is like an underlying process that gives rise to all these partial uprisings in which the class tries to address the immediate problems that faces it. And for us, what all of this raises is the need for working class organizations not to condemn the working class as it goes about its daily ways of existing, not to condemn the class as it's resisting capitalist exploitation in the only way that is better able to do, given the current conditions of struggle. So the issue for us is that the important is for us to position ourselves in such a way that we are able to understand why is the class coming out in this way, and intervene in a way that makes it possible for the class to understand the conditions that give rise to where it is, so that it can emerge better prepared, better equipped to wage struggles for power in future. Now, the issue is that the working class doesn't just wish itself, or the working class doesn't enter struggles on the basis of understanding how capitalism works. The working class enters struggles on the basis of its experience of its conditions of existence. And sometimes those might not always correspond to how we understand a politically conscious working class. So I think the challenge for us is to understand that the class struggles in conditions that it encounters, in conditions that are imposed on itself by how capitalism structures and restructures it. And therefore for us, the issue is not so much to judge the class, but to understand where it is, to understand its current political weaknesses and see it as a challenge in terms of how we intervene to assist its own, the process of overcoming its weaknesses. And lastly, the last point that I need to make is that we view the reinstatement of the 350 social relief grant as a direct response by the state to the developments, this July developments. In other words, the state reinstatement of that grant is a response to the fact that the class came out and went out in this food riots. And on that basis, we think, therefore, the socialist and working class organizations need to orientate to that, need to take into account that the state didn't just out of goodwill reinstate that grant. The state did so under the pressure of what unfolded before our own eyes. And so we think that we need, as socialist and working class organizations, be at the forefront of an issue like this of the grant, as millions of people, I think currently it is estimated that about 9 million people are eligible to the grant. And our estimation is that these are the same people that would have been out in the streets during the looting, the same people who will be accessing this grant. And I think for us, we think this affords an opportunity to be closer to the masses and hear how they interpret the world and how they see the events, as a way to try and help the class to organize its wealth outlook and overcome its existing political weaknesses, so that come the next round, which is guaranteed, given that the Cyril Ramaphosa government, the ANC government, is clearly locked into its neoliberal trajectory. This is not something that is going to change. It is only going to change as a result of struggles. And those struggles can only be effective if the working class is better organized. And the working class can only be better organized if it's able to learn from its own struggles. The working class doesn't engage in struggles on the basis of having read or on the basis of having, the working class enters struggles on the basis of the problems that are in front of it. The working class organizes on the basis of resolving its immediate problems related to how capitalism is structuring it. So we think that the grant is...
Comrade Ishmael, if you could just wrap it up, thanks.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah. We think that socialist and working class organizations need to accompany the masses as they go through this process of the 350 grant, as part of building the necessary strength that will be required to wage present and future battles. Thanks, Comrade Dave. I think some of the issues we can debate in the course of the question and answer session.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Comrade Ishmael. A lot to chew on there in terms of that presentation and following much of the statement that the COVID working class campaign submitted. Again, just to draw your attention to the chat where I've pasted in the links to the article by Mandy and Sean, the statement by the working class campaign, and also the statement by Abahlali. Now, without wasting any further time, we're going to shift to our third speaker. Busisiwe Diko is representing here Abahlali Basandamjolo. Busisiwe, thank you so much for taking the time and to come and speak with us. If you wouldn't mind, please just turning on your video and your sound as well, please. And then you can proceed to give your input. Thank you. Busisiwe, if you can hear me, please would you turn unmute yourself and also turn on your video if you are able, please. Thanks.
Comrades, good afternoon. Good evening. I have an issue of electricity, comrades, since I'm staying in the shacks. So we have an electricity issue.
Okay, Busisiwe, maybe if you turn off your video, then you'll have better connection. It's okay. I was going to say, if you want to turn your video off, that's fine. You can just keep the sound on. Maybe that will make a better connection.
Yes, comrade, because we have an electricity issue here. We don't have electricity at the moment. So even if I can turn on my video, you won't see me anymore.
No problem. Go ahead, Busisiwe. No problem at all.
Oh, okay, comrade. Thank you so much. As Abahlali Basemjondolo, This is how we understand this unrest in KZN and Gauteng province. What I'm going to deliver now is the way we understand this desertification and disturbance that had happened during the time of looting. Actually, firstly, this has typically involved the public demonstration of disorder across both provinces, KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng province. So what we have noticed is the organization, people have fought on behalf of certain individuals. The looting and the rioting was caused by unsatisfied citizens or the people that were in support of our former president Jacob Zuma's 15th month sentence in prison. Again, this looting thing has happened because of order management by South African police services. Our law is so devastating. Again, people fought the battle that doesn't involve them. Even people from different organizations, even from people from different political parties, they joined the looting. Most of the people, 90% of the people joined the looting because people are hungry outside. Besides the fact that the looting has brought up the increase in crime. Why I'm saying this, because many people that were involved or who were the conveners or who were acting as the conveners of the looting, their crime interests were served. That is why I'm saying that the crime has been increased by that time of the looting. And what worries me the most is that our former President Zuma's 15-month sentence in jail have got nothing to do with the vandalism of the shops. I'm saying this because many people have lost their jobs. Few shops that were left behind, that were not looted and that were not burnt down and vandalized, they decided to rise up the prices, and the prices in these shops have affected the people who are not the conveners of the looting, have affected the people who did not go to loot. People like those people that cannot see, those people that cannot walk, the disabled and all of that. So my question is that was there no other way to express anger to those people that were angry because of Zuma's sentence? Was there no other way to express anger than to burn down the shops that we used to buy food from and take away the goods that do not belong to them? Fine, I understand people were angry about our former president Zuma, our former president Jacob Zuma's 15th month sentence. But one of the reasons that have caused this looting, it is not only the sentence of Jacob Zuma's sentence, it's also the consequence of the lockdown, because during the lockdown last year, when this corona pandemic was introduced in our country, many people have lost their jobs. People are still expressing the anger that they have experienced last year when they lost their jobs in 2020 when the lockdown was introduced. But at the same time, when the lockdown was introduced, there were regulations There were lockdown regulations that were put there and were meant not to be broken or contravened. But what worries me the most as a young person from Mjondolo is that the lockdown regulations also were contravened by municipality and government employees. Even SAPS as well, they contravened the lockdown regulations. They couldn't stay indoors. And one another thing that I would add to that lockdown issue, I don't want to go away of the fact that lockdown anger has made people to loot the shops using Jacob Zuma's 15 sentence in jail. But then at the same time, I would like to express this during the lockdown. People living in the shacks, people living in the informal settlements, were not allowed to go anywhere. People living in the informal settlement, people living, we could not be able to practice those social distances because the places we are staying in are congested, they are overcrowded and dirty. So we couldn't practice those lockdown regulations like social distancing and all of that. Besides the fact that people used lockdown anger and Jacob Zuma's trial to loot the shops. And Jacob Zuma's trial, according to my own perspective, Jacob Zuma's trial have got nothing to do with the shops. Because if people were angry that much, they should have marched to the parliament or municipal office or anywhere else or in a ruling party office and demand that Zuma should be released without going to the shops. Because I believe that as a young person, Zuma's trial has got nothing to do with the shops. One another thing is that the looting and vandalizing of the shops has damaged so many jobs, and so many people now are desperate. They can't go to work, they can't go anywhere, they can't find jobs anywhere, and those people are starving and hungry. Poverty is striking them, and many businesses were damaged, many jobs were lost. People suffered from poverty because they lost their jobs. Fine. Again, poor governance policies of South Africa have caused this looting because it's been now 27 years old since it's been 27 years now since our democracy was achieved in South Africa. So, or since 1994. So, poor governance policies also were cause of the looting, were cause of the angry people vandalizing shops and all that, blocking roads, bridges, and all that. So, and one another thing is that as in South Africa, we are fighting for equal society. You know what? In South Africa, there is no equal society. So, another thing is that there are no necessities for everyone in South Africa. You know what? Because those things that are basic needs or social necessities are privatized by the people who think that they are owning or they are ruling the country, including the resources of the state. They are not shared or distributed to the people of the state. These are some of the reasons that people are angry. Are angry and have decided to loot the
Unfortunately, we have just lost Busisiwe. I think everybody could see that she was struggling with the connectivity there. Not surprising given location and a lack of electricity. Oh, Busisiwe, are you back with us now? Please proceed. Busisiwe, can you hear me? If you can, please go ahead, continue. If you just need to unmute yourself. Okay.
Can you complete?
Yes, yes. If you could, we can hear you now. If you can just, okay. Please unmute yourself. You need to unmute yourself. Okay.
Proceed, right?
Okay. Go ahead.
Can I proceed?
Yes, please proceed, Com. Okay. Unfortunately, Comrade Busisiwe, we cannot hear you. I think your connection is going in and out now. So, yeah, sorry about that. As soon as you are able, if you come back on, just please.
Okay.
Go ahead, Comrade.
Can you hear me? All
Yes,
right,
go
okay,
ahead.
fine. These are some of the reasons, comrade, that the people have looted the shops. Some people acted like it is Jacob Zuma's 15-month sentence that caused them to loot the shops. But poverty, unemployment, basic necessities for the poor, equal society have caused people to go and loot the shop because they have seen the opportunity. People have used the chance. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any unrest if people were provided with basic necessities. And then again, prevention of crime. I don't know if SAPS is still I don't know if SAPS if they still know their job description, that it is to protect, not to be biased or take sides or take sides of the government. Because if you would notice, SAPS were there as well. They're using the cars, they're using the web cars, they're also looting on their time of youth. They also looted. The thing is that they didn't go to their houses when they were checking the groceries, the accessories, the appliances, electricity appliances, and whatever that was looted from the shops. They didn't raid their shops. So, but they wanted to, they went straight to our houses to check if what we have stolen, what we have taken from the shop, because the people that are staying in the shops are known as people that are violent, the people who don't have anything, the people who are uneducated, the people who are criminals, and all that. So, as I was saying, police houses were not raided. They only raided the shacks and the people staying in the informal settlement. So by doing that, they left us. Lost one comrade. They shot one comrade during the time of raid in one of our branches. And during this week of crisis, in which all lives have been lost and many homes were burnt down to the ground. Places of work rent and infrastructure destroyed. The infrastructure was destroyed. The infrastructure that has got nothing to do with Zuma's with Zuma's trial or sentence. And in many cases, that fake news has been up. So as I was saying from the start, people have turned against each other. They started fighting. So, and then at that time again, confusion and anger was is very important, that people do not accept the truth of everything that they see on social media without first making sure that it is correct. It's very important that we do not share unverified information as more especially they may have been designed to divide people. So all progressive organizations need to keep making this very clear to their members. So our movement as Abasa issued a long statement clearly explaining our understanding of what was happening at that time and explaining our position. Because in this political thing, we do not have or we don't intervene as Abasa we don't intervene in any situation. We don't involve ourselves with in battles that do not involve ourselves. So, however, this has been drawn to our attention by Muslim comrades in Durban and Johannesburg, that someone took our statement and added in the whole new section in the middle, which was anti-Muslim.
Okay.
So again, I would like you comrades to know this that this fake version of our statement was subgroup causing fear and a number of our widely circulated in various Muslim names as then received abusive and sometimes racist WhatsApp messages from people who had seen the fake version. So if you can go back to the looting thing, during that time, many people in Phoenix here in KZN were shot, were killed, were beaten, and were burnt. So this looting also, it didn't only vandalize shops, damage people's jobs. It didn't only do that, but then people lost their lives in Phoenix because people were beaten. So this looting, again, as I'm trying to cover up, this looting again it caused overwhelming racism war, because people fought against each other at that time of looting. So that is how I understand the unrest that happened in KZN in Gauteng province. Thank you, comrades.
Thank you very much, Comrade Busisiwe. And thank you for talking to us through very difficult technical circumstances. We very much appreciate your making that attempt and not having any electricity and being the bad connection. So very much appreciate your time and your perspectives and those of Abahlali in relation specifically to what went on in KZN. So comrades, we have now heard from our three speakers, and we are going to open up the floor. I have noted the comments or questions in the chat, and I will ask the speakers just to look in the chat, so we don't have to repeat. I think everybody can see those comments and questions, and just make a note of them. I'm just going to note that several of them are just comments that are being made. There was one question related to on the question and answer, which Comrade Ishmael has just responded to, about when the looting started and the days. But now we're going to ask for, if you would like to speak directly, please raise your hand, and then I will recognize you and then allow you to talk. And please keep it as succinct as you can, so that we can allow as many comrades. I've noted Sean, and I'm going to hold on a second, Sean. Go ahead.
All right, thanks. Thanks, comms, and thanks to presenters. So I think what Mandy raised was quite important. If you look at, say, Argentina, which it was compared to, progressive forces there during that time that happened were far stronger than we are now in South Africa. So they weren't as strong as they historically were, but there was, and still is, quite an overt working class culture that is influenced by an overt anti-capitalism. I think the point we're trying to make is here it's something different. So, I mean, obviously, Mandy mentions 1994's rolled back. But you do have the APF, and ABM comes out of that era too, and various community struggles in the 2000s. Even those are now rolled back. So you could have maybe argued that things could have gone in a different direction in the early 2000s. But even those formations and the culture that they attempted to build has been rolled back. I think the only one kind of really left is the ABM. So it takes the events of mid-July take place in a context where progressive forces are really marginalized. And I speak as part of that. We are seriously weak. And it takes place in a context where individualism has been ideologically pushed. So I think I hear what Comrade Ish says about, kind of it being anti-capitalism because people are taking goods. I would argue you can make an argument that briefly it does challenge property around consumer goods. I will concede that, but I would not argue it is anti-capitalism in the sense that it's looking for something better. And anti-capitalism at its best is an ideology, and it does seek something better. I think what it represented in mid-July is the harsh conditions everyone mentioned. So people really are taking, well, most people, there was also some people that weren't just taking goods, but are taking goods about, and it's sort of some of it's about survival. That to me points towards how far the working class has been pushed back. So, Comrade Ish mentioned that part of the project is to turn people into labor. I think it's gone far more than that, actually. I think part of the project is to smash society, and some of what we saw in mid-July represents how weak kind of progressive formations have been. So for me, the events of mid-July could not take on an anti-capitalist thing because of how weak we actually are and how progressive forces are. It maybe could have had something different if that wasn't the situation. And then I think we need to take stock and actually realize, well, we're extremely
marginal. Sean, if you could just wrap up, please. Thanks.
Yeah. So I think the main thing is, how do we change that? How do we address that? How do we build something better out of this? Otherwise, I think, yes, you will see sort of these events, but they're not essentially going to change the system. And what you see out of it, unfortunately, is the right wing is essentially are the organized forces in it. It's the Zuma faction, and then it's the vigilante faction. I would argue the working class was not organized in that sense, and it's limited to 2 provinces as well, 3 provinces. But yeah, so unless that changes, you can't have a systemic challenge. And the forces that were organized are not particularly progressive forces. So I think that's the lesson that needs to be drawn, rather than it's anti-capitalist. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Sean, for that. I've noted, Peter. I'm going to allow you just a second. I'm just going to raise, just for some of the comments and questions in the chat. Wayne is asking a question, I think, that comrades can, the speakers and others can address it towards the end, which is where do we go from here? In other words, what needs to be done, and particularly in holding the government accountable. And Patricia is just making a particular comment regarding agreeing with the driving force being hunger and anger and the situation of ordinary working class people, and particularly those that are without any income and jobs. So we'll continue to just monitor that chat. Peter, I'm going to now go ahead and just unmute yourself, and you can ask your question or make your comment. Peter? Comrade Peter, please unmute yourself if you would like to talk. Otherwise, we're going to move on. Okay. Comrade David?
Am I unmuted, Dale?
Yes, you are. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, look, I want to comment. I was really interested in something the Babakhlali speaker from the shack said. You see, I don't live in a shack, and I read the Daily Maverick every day. And almost everybody who writes in the Daily Maverick doesn't live in a shack as well. And what the speaker said is she used the word lockdown anger. I haven't heard that idea clearly before, but I think it's something, it's not food anger, it's not unemployment anger, it's lockdown anger. I think we need to take this more seriously. What I'm understanding is she's saying is that people in the shacks feel they can't social distance because they're in overcrowded housing. The lockdown didn't work for them. I don't know whether they can afford to buy masks. I know they can't afford to take a taxi to a clinic so they can get an injection. So what I'm saying is she's the only person who's mentioned the Daily Maverick doesn't mention it. The first two speakers didn't mention it. I think we need to take seriously the concept of lockdown anger. So could people please explain this to me? I think there's something important there.
Okay, thank you, David. And we'll ask Busisiwe at the end there to address that. I see now I'll ask David. David, if you can unmute yourself and ask your question or make your comment. Dave, go ahead. We can't hear you, unfortunately.
I was the one that spoke.
No, I'm talking about David Hempson. Sorry, another David. Dave Hempson, Comrade Dave Hempson. Okay, we seem to have a problem with communication with some comrades putting up their hand but not being able to hear, or maybe, I don't know. Dave Hempson, Comrade Dave, I see you're unmuted, but we cannot hear you. Okay, maybe we'll come back to you, Comrade David. Sepang, go ahead. Could you unmute yourself and make your comment or question?
Thank you. I just want to say thanks to Ishmael and Mandy for those presentations and for those insights. Now I'm based in Pietermaritzburg, which unfortunately was one of the so-called epicenters of this whole thing. You know, so I just want to draw some few observations that I actually witnessed during those sad days. Just to draw a picture, the whole thing the night before was the day before was created by like strings of gunshots. Like we had gunshots, like, you know, all over the southern part of Pietermaritzburg, which is like the Itindale, Imbali area. So it was preceded by gunshots, and then at night there was some noise and some singing. And then the whole thing just started at an area called Kwamabulada. You know, it's a spa center within the Itindale area, right next to the Itindale Hospital. And then from there, it moved to Itindale. Now, what is interesting is that between Itindale Mall and Kwamabulala, there is a Caltex garage, and there is a string of shops. there's a supermarket, and then now between those two, the Guamabulala Center, which is a spa center, and the Itindale Mall, which is like a big mall, those were not affected. So the Carter Garage and the string of old shops, the butchery and the police store were not impacted. And close to it, which was affected, people actually moved and walked past these shops and these gas stations without doing anything. But then, if you also observe the shops right in the townships and the shops, didn't do anything to those. We know most of them are owned by Somalians, and but they were not affected. That's one observation, and also the fact that there's a saying which says where there's a vacuum, evil will pitch a tent. How the energy of the unemployed youth was utilized within those days. It was really amazing to see. That young people actually went out to take these things and to smash shops, to actually set alight some of those infrastructure and facilities. And when you look at it, Zuma supporter was there. The anti-Zuma supporter was there as well. The anti-Ramaphosa people were there. So the Lucha was a very much diverse person politically. So that gave a sense of there is a high sense of anger against this government. Because people are hungry, but they were not just taking food; they were taking everything of value, which could be converted into money or otherwise, or utilize it. So there was there's a high sense of
Comrade
anger.
Sepang, if you can just wrap your comments up, please. Thank you.
And also, lastly, I want to say within the whole thing, there was also a collective sense of trauma and a collective sense of depression, which was brought by the aftermath of it all. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Comrade Sepang, for those very, I think, instructive comments and witness. I think, comrades who were able and have been able to witness things firsthand is always very important to hear. Comrade Keith, you are next. Go ahead. Just unmute yourself and please ask your question or make your comment.
Yes, a very good evening to all comrades. Yes, my comment is, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine. Thanks.
Okay, I'm actually from Back to Work campaign in Western Cape Town. Comrades, my concern is the reason why the people are going on in various areas, and with the looting and stuff like that. Okay, it's nothing to do with Jacob Zuma, but my thing is, if the government can give jobs to the people, then such things won't happen actually in different areas. If you see in Cape Town, there was no looting by our malls and stuff like that because there was control under the people. People told one another, if they're gonna loot here by the malls, things gonna go up. And if you can see in Eastern Cape, where the people did loot actually, the stuff got up, the petrol did go up again. And I mean, for you who got a Mercedes Benz or a driver a BMW, I mean, it's very difficult for you because all your money must go into the tank where it should go on the table. And in our areas where the people work, the councillors actually don't actually work actually with us. But we actually, as a campaign, we go out in our areas and go tell the people what's going on and understand. Okay, there's people who can't afford actually to come out sometimes right by the meetings and stuff like that. But due to the union side actually, then they provide actually the people actually okay, there's your, if you come, you get your traveling money till there and back home again. You get food actually just to come to the meetings. But my concern is mostly if the government just the same with the 350s. I mean, it's so little for the people. I mean, if you take 350 now, 2-3 minutes it's gone because you must buy light, you must buy a lot of stuff. And I mean, and the other thing is, what if there's 10 people in the house? Um, is the government going to supply anyone with a 1,500? I don't think he's gonna. But I mean, to get all the billions and trillions, rather give the people work. I mean, there's a lot of work outside there. If you see by the city of Cape Town, uh, 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 um, there's a lot of vacancies there. Why don't they fill the positions? People that retrench, people die actually, and I mean people resign from the work. But why don't they fill the gaps? I mean, I blame the government for this. Everything that happened here in the whole Western Cape, in other areas, is the government is to be blamed. I mean, the same thing is you tell you to wear a mask, but I mean, what is that mask got to do? If you see in the area in the actually in the oh yeah, no, sorry, anyhow, but I don't want to go off route now, but comrades, if you just can hear to what I'm telling you, the reason why we're going under, I mean, yes, the election is also coming off. We must try and hit the city right around. So the government, listen here, we are now actually tired of things that happen in areas. I mean, this. Why is it that the children don't want to go to school? Why are they turning out in gangsterism? Because that gangster can give him a car, he can give him tickets, he can give him. But I mean, if he can go work for his money, he won't go actually out to use that at that other side. Understand my point? But comrades, I'm not going to keep you up. I just say thank you very much for the opportunity I can get. I have to speak actually, and Amandla. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Comrade Keith, for that input. I'm going to take the last hand here, John. I see you, and I'm going to just allow you to, and then we're going to ask the speakers to come back and make some final engagements, engage some of the comments and questions that have been asked, and then we'll try to wrap it up not too far after 7, which is when we're supposed to end. Okay, Comrade John, go ahead and unmute yourself. John?
Thank you, Dale. Yeah, no, my comment is centering on the understanding the actions of the people. I mean, as Comrade Ismail outlined, when the masses entered the riots, and how do we understand the actions of the masses? I think Sean is saying that it's not anti-capitalist because there were no progressive forces involved. Now, I mean, for me and for the CWCC, what is important is that when the masses act, their actions, we need to unpack it. We need to kind of unravel the meanings of their actions. They may not say it that this is anti-capitalism, but the fact that their anger and their need to address their immediate question of hunger was directed at the shopping malls and the supermarkets and the storming of those particular institutions or those particular places. Clearly, as Is is saying, people are saying that their right to food, their right to subsistence is greater than the right to private property in the form of consumer goods that are owned by capitalists. And as is saying, under capitalism, the only way you can have access to the means of subsistence is if you have money. And you can only have money if you have work. And if you don't have work, you don't have money, you don't have access to the means of subsistence. So the masses are saying, no, we have a right to those means of subsistence. In that sense, that logic of the masses through their actions undermine the logic of capitalism. And in that sense, it's anti-capitalism. Although, as we all agree, there was no perspectives, there was no slogans, there was no program that outlined those particular things. But I think we need to understand the meaning of that. And it's through that we also clarify, not only to the people who were in the riots, but also for the broader working class, that those food riots were very, very anti-capitalist, because it hit at one of the pillars of capitalism. And I think that for us is an important kind of political lessons, so that we then generalize those things. Yes, we all agree that the form of action that the mass undertaken is a reflection of the state of their organizations, which is weak. But it doesn't mean that when they act, we do not understand the political meanings of that. Yeah. Thanks, Dale. I'm not going to take too much.
Okay. Thank you, John, for that input and question. So there's a lot of issues that have been put on the table here. Again, I've in relation to some of there's many comments that have been made in the chat. I would just put your attention there to the chat. Busisiwe has made several more comments in relation to in addition to what she had said in her input. And Busisiwe, if you I'm going to give you the first opportunity to respond if you'd like. If you can just please keep your comments to 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll go to the other two speakers. So if you can unmute yourself and please respond or engage further. Thank you. Busisiwe, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, comrades.
Okay, go ahead.
Someone said something about lockdown. They said that I have mentioned lockdown on my input when I have started talking. Yes, I have mentioned lockdown, comrade, because we can't run away or deny the fact that the whole conflict is caused by the introduction of the COVID pandemic last year. It is not only the sentence of our former president, Jacob Zuma's sentence that has caused people being angry and started to loot the shops. It started long ago when the lockdown and COVID pandemic started. And it became the main reason as well it became the main reason or the main excuse of exploiting our people by the employers. Even the way government has dealt with it, I mean the introduction of the COVID pandemic in South Africa, it has become the main reason or the main excuse of exploiting our people by the employers. For instance, or for example, many people lost jobs because of the corona pandemic, and they were not getting paid, or till now they have not yet got paid for being retrenched. That is why I'm saying that lockdown and COVID pandemic introduction in our country has become an excuse of exploiting our people. And the way government have dealt with it caused contradiction by taking doctors and putting them back front and put the ministers to the forefront. Like the doctors, they don't know nothing about the lives of our people and how should a certain individuals with certain symptoms should be handled or treated. So it is so discouraging, demotivating, and devastating with the way our government is dealing or is putting the lives of the people in danger because of money. For instance, now, when I go back to this looting thing and the vandalizing of the shops, the case of our former president, it's a confusion because people are fighting the battle that do not, are fighting a political battle that they don't even know about. People are putting their lives at risk because of a political backing that doesn't involve them. So that is why I'm saying that our government is not putting first or making the lives of the people first priority, especially the people that are staying in congested and overcrowded areas like us, the people living in the informal settlements, especially in Cape Town and in KZN. Those people are living in a deserted, in a rejected and in an abandoned nation because they are only remembered or they are only known by the government employees or by the minister for the period of elections for them to go and vote. Sorry, not forgetting that those people should get adequate housing. There's so many people. There's so many things that are making people angry. Firstly, it's poverty.
Comrade Busi Siwe, sorry. Comrade Busi Siwe, if you can wrap it up, we are over our time already. So if you can just wrap your comments, it would be appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, comrade. Thank you so much. And sorry for being long, but the list is so long. It's very long for the people. For the reason why people are so angry, it's not only the actual sentence of our former president Jacob Zuma. Thank you so much, comrade.
Sorry, thank you very much, Busi Siwe. Very much appreciated, and under the difficult circumstances of the communication. Again, Comrade Ishmael, I'm going to now allow you to come back and have a few minutes of engagement. And if you are able, there's a particular question that has been put up several times, which is that the way in which it's been characterized, comrades have different perspectives, but I think what most people agree on is that working class organizations and others have yet to sort of try to coalesce around this. So maybe speaking a little bit about the way forward or some of your thoughts on that front. Go ahead, Ishmael. Thank you.
Thanks, Comrade Dale. Comrades, I'll just try to quickly run through some of the issues and concerns raised. Yeah, I think John has dealt with the issue raised by Sean in terms of what I meant by the food riots being anti-capitalist. I did not, that was not meant to convey a message that look, this was a clearly thought out program, socialist program of fighting capitalism, overthrowing capitalism. This was more the fact conveying the message that by its effects of disrupting the logic of capitalism. Capitalism requires that you get access to material goods and services only via the medium of money, via the medium of payment. And if you don't do that, if you disrupt that, so that's what I'm saying. That's that's the meaning of anti-capitalism that I'm conveying. Had it been the other one of like a self-conscious actor that is clear about what the end goal is, we wouldn't be having a conversation like the one we have now. A working class that is weak is not in a position to can pose like an anti-capitalist program in the way that Comrade Sean is envisaging. And also the issue of the experiences of food riots elsewhere. I mean, food riots has been an important indices in the evolution of working class struggles historically. I mean, you go back to the French Revolution, you find elements of food riots. You go back to the Russian Revolution, you find elements of food riots. Hence the slogan "Peace, Land, Bread." So even in the other parts of the third world, on the continent, the structural adjustment programs have led to instances where the masses come out to try and confront this situation. The issue is that it's not always being termed in this way. But the important thing is that when the working class does that, it does so on the basis of the immediate pressures that it is facing. So that will differ from place to place, of course, depending on how organized and how strong politically the class is. So in that sense, then comparisons has its own limits. Ours, I think, is to understand the the concrete nature of that which unfolds here in the context of the class that has been on the retreat on various fronts. In fact, the fact that the country emerges as the most unequal, it goes to tell you the weaknesses of the working class in terms of its inability to impose its own interests on the national agenda. And then, Comrade Dave, the way I understood Comrade Busisi, where the notion of lockdown anger can be a metaphor for a range of things, of which food rioting is one expression. I mean, there will be other ones where I'm sure comrades will be aware, last year, almost around this time, there were very long queues where poor people queuing for food parcels, which never arrived because of course, they went into the families or some cadres of the ANC. Now, for me, these are some of the things that then will boil into what Busisi will call lockdown anger. It can be expressed in various ways, and I think this rioting is one of those forms in which next time it might be something else, depending on what the trigger, the proximate trigger will be. And then there's the issue that I think comrades are grappling with this thing of the issues arising because of the dilemmas of the Zuma faction being the trigger. Now, the issue is that comrades, when the conditions are ripe, it doesn't matter what the trigger is. It can be anything, for as long as already the soil is fertile for the kinds of events that we have seen. Anything could have easily ignited that event. It just happened to be that in this case, the issues around Zuma were the immediate causes. And then, of course, the poor responses of the state emboldened the class to go out openly without any fear of consequences. I mean, to loot, to take food, take TV, and all of that. And I think that's another issue that the working class defines what is basic. What is basic is not something that comes naturally. It's a matter of conventions. If the working class believe that a flat TV screen is basic, they will do so, and they've done that. They've practically answered that question of what they consider to be basic to a decent living standards in today's South Africa. Now, there is also this notion that I've seen it in the chat that there's a sentiment that the poverty and hunger of the masses has been taken advantage of by forces with other agendas. I think that, comrades, here it's a pity that the working class is rendered in a way incapable to think on its own, to define its own terrain of action, to make rational decisions about its way of acting. In other words, the working class can only be used, they can only act on the basis of instructions from elsewhere. So in other words, they're not capable on their own to decide the forms of actions, methods of, and I think that's a problem, because then it means that the class, it has a certain way of conceiving the class, which I think is quite unfortunate in many ways. I think we need to accept that the class entered the terrain on the basis of its own immediate problems. As I said earlier on, a crisis is an opportunity to resolve problems, and the class used this crisis as a moment to deal with that which was present. And I think we need to acknowledge that. We might not like it. It might appear as though it's driving another agenda, but for us, what is clear is that this is what the working does. I mean, in many of the places, people just looted and left the places. I mean, the torching and all of that, those are more reminiscent of the Zuma factions, the methods, in terms of the methods of engagement.
All right, Ishmael, if you could wrap up, thanks.
Oh, okay, yeah, and lastly, I think Comrade David Hampson says, look, it's clear we can't hold this government accountable. Yeah, and I agree with that, we can't. And he says that, look, the mission should be to overthrow it. Now, the issue is that how do you get to there? How do you move from here to that kind of a situation? And what we're saying at the CWCC is that we need to accompany the working class as it enters the terrain of what David Hampson refers to as reforms. Now the working class is going out in their millions to register for the 350 social relief grant. I think it is our duty to go there and explain to them why it is important that a victory like that must be accessed. And it is only in the context of accessing that victory that we are able to build more organizational strength and power to fight for even more. It's not about whether the amount of 350 is enough or not. It's more about the digging of trenches. I mean, building that as a basis for building strength to fight, I mean, a future battle. So for me, it's not about whether or not we need to fight for 1,500 in the form of the basic income grant. The issue is how best do we facilitate the self-organization and self-activity of the masses as the only guarantee for the class to impose its own interest on society, on the ruling classes. Thanks, Comrade David, and thanks, comrades, for listening.
Okay, appreciate those, Ishmael and Mandy. Now giving you the opportunity to come back and say a final few words as well. Go ahead.
No, I'll try to keep it short. I'm good at that. So, look, I think the main concern. So, comrades have asked what needs to be learned going forward, and I think for me the biggest challenge that the left faces is this tendency to glorify and misinterpret actions and misinterpret responses. I think claiming that the reinstatement of the 350 grant was a direct result of the riots is naive. I think it lacks an analysis of the politics of the country and the world that we're living in, and because the 350 grant is happening in the context of two warring classes, two warring brothers in the same political party in an election year. And I would argue, I think the riots may have contributed to a certain extent, but I think there's no way a government that wasn't trying to deal with the crisis of COVID, unemployment, which is now officially, as of the statistics that came out yesterday, the highest in the world. I think that without that context, I don't think the 350 would have happened just based on the riots. I think we also need to remember we're in an election year that also has an impact of the 350. And I think, it's critical that we take a step back and analyze where power lies. And each and every one of us in this argument has, and in the comments and everything, has stated that the working class is really weak. And another question that was asked is, how do we hold government to accountable? Bottom line is we can't. And I think we really need to begin to analyze this so-called democracy that people claim that we live in for what it actually is. It's not a democracy. Government are not accountable to the people. Government are accountable to the capitalist class that sponsors their political positions. In the case of our current government, it's the old Broederbond. In the case of the previous president, it was the Guptas. And we need to, as the working class, begin that political analysis and start to say, this entire system is problematic. How do we, as people, reorganize in a way? And I would encourage comrades to read about the Spanish Revolution and the anarchist response, and how they built communities, and how they built political responsibility and direct democracy within their communities. Because the only way we're going to shift this is if we take power back. And we have to be honest with ourselves. Absolutely, we're in a social crisis, and the riots were a legitimate, righteously indignated response to the appalling conditions people live in. There's no question about that. But we're never going to win anything, and we're never going to change society until we're honest about what was bad about it, and the xenophobia and the all the challenges that came out of it, workers fighting against workers. It was not what we want the revolution to be. And we have to be honest about the bad aspects of it and about what started it, because how it started does matter. It's key to the whole issue. If we don't look at how it started and what pushed it, there were other reasons for that. And we've got to analyze that, because if you don't consciously start something and give it an impetus, the Russian Revolution, the Spanish Revolution, they were based on strong working class organizations, strong principles that were against things like xenophobia and racism. We've got to have that. Otherwise, we just end up in a society where the working class is pitted against each other and those that rule us continue to do so. Sorry, there was a bit of a rant. Done, Dale.
Okay. Sorry, Ishmael, we're not going to, we don't have the time, and it wouldn't be fair to go back and forth again and give response. Otherwise, we'll continue the debate. We're already almost 20 minutes over. So I apologize for that. But thank you. Just, I'm going to put on my video here. I just first of all wanted to say on behalf of ILRIG and Workers World Media Productions, thank you so much to everyone for hanging in. We've had a lot of people that had to leave over the last half an hour. That's fine. Understand that. But I think the discussion was very important one. There are many issues that were raised that obviously could not be addressed fully or engaged. That's always the case. This debate could go on for a long time. Just to answer David Hempson, your question with regards to this discussion, yes, we've been recording it and it will be made available on the ILRIG and Workers World Media Productions websites. And so please, in the next, they'll be available in the next day or so. If you would just visit, it's I'll put it into the chat there. But it's www.ilrigsa.org.za. Okay, there it is. And please go and visit, and you'll be able to download the recording and listen if you missed out on other things. Despite the technical challenges, once again, thank you so much, Busisiwe, for overcoming those challenges and joining us and sharing your perspectives. And those are Abahlali, very important. Thank you, Ishmael, for your insights and arguments from the Working Class Campaign. And also thank you to Mandy for your perspectives. All very much appreciated. We will continue this. This is certainly not the last, nor the first nor the last discussion about this. This is going to be with us for a long time. And many of us will continue discussing these things in our organizations, in our struggles, and I'm sure ILRIG, as well as Workers World Media Productions, will look at other opportunities to continue the conversation. Until then, comrades, please take care, be safe, and thank you once again for joining us. Good night.